Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Canadians Abroad. I am your host for today, Josh Deming. I will, as always, be joined by my colleague Alex Gonge-Ruzik, and today we will be discussing Liam Fraser returning to Major League Soccer, Ugbo scoring a goal and getting an assist in his debut for Cardiff City, plus a lot more. So hopefully you guys are excited, and if you are, let's get into the episode now. All right, Alex, to kick off Canadians Abroad, we are talking transfers because Liam Fraser is on the move. FC Dallas acquired his rights from Minnesota for $100,000 in 2024 general allocation money. Minnesota first acquired that position from Toronto in exchange for $50,000 in 2024 general allocation money, but the deal is done and Liam Fraser returns to Major League Soccer with FC Dallas on a deal for the rest of 2023 with options for 2024 and 2025. What do you make of this move?
First and foremost, it doesn't get much more MLS than general allocation money, negotiation rights, discovery, or, all that good stuff. So it was a very MLS move when it went down. But ultimately, I think it's a good reset for Liam Fraser. He knows MLS very well, obviously spent time with Toronto FC, had a loan as well with the Columbus Crew where he looked good. And ultimately, this is a chance to hit the reset button because he took a gamble going to Europe, no doubt. I think it was, an intriguing gamble to take. He wanted to make the World Cup squad. Eventually, he made it. You saw what it meant to him in that special video last year. But ultimately, the gamble with him going to Deinze was you get promoted, you go to the first division in Belgium, and then you go from there. And then they just didn't get promoted. And then, and then it didn't happen again. And it's just, it's something where then minutes started to get hard to come by, and it didn't end up being the right fit. That happens, and now he can come back to a league that he's familiar with. New setting as well, and maybe for the best he doesn't head back to a Toronto FC right now where there isn't that stability. You go to a Dallas, they love to develop players. Of course, Fraser isn't he isn't a teenager anymore, but he's still someone in his mid-20s, still has room to go, room to develop, and hopefully he can find that familiarity that he has with MLS and then maybe hit another level at a club like Dallas.
Now, this for me raises a question, and it's one that I think is a great debate. Is kind of the narrative always out there for Canadians and Americans as well, is leave Major League Soccer, go to Europe and help prolong your career, get to that next step and push for the national team. Liam Fraser, like you just mentioned, did do that, and he hit the ground running in Belgium. He was a starter, played almost every minute, and he just kind of fell apart for him. So I don't think it's always a case where a player absolutely needs to go to Europe. I think they need to wait out for the right move. When I first heard of him going there, I didn't think it was the right move. I thought maybe staying in Major League Soccer for a couple more seasons might have been the play. He went over there. It didn't work out. Do you think it's maybe we'll give different Canadians in Major League Soccer right now an outlook on, all right, well, these are my options. It's not just as straightforward as it can be. And I think Ali Ahmed out there is a great example. This is a player that I think could use another year or two, maybe in Major League Soccer, to help improve as opposed to just go over at the first opportunity that presents itself. Do you think that's maybe now a concern for some Canadians looking to make that jump?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something you can't ignore, so to speak. And I think there's two factors also to consider. I think, of course, there's a European angle. You have to pick the right club because sometimes you make that jump and it goes seamlessly, right? Like you can take a risk and you go to a second division club, you get the promotion, you kind of build confidence, you end up in the first division. It's great. But also, we've seen countless examples of players who maybe go to the wrong club. It doesn't fit you. There's other issues, right? You hear sometimes you go to some leagues where they don't pay you on, just little things like that, right? That's kind of the risk that you get, especially outside those top 5 leagues where, there just can be so many factors at play. And I think it's something absolutely to consider, especially now on the flip side of it. Of course, in Europe, there's so many mix of clubs, plus, as we know, in different leagues in Europe, right? Like some leagues are very top heavy. So if you're not going, say you're going to Belgium, but you're not going maybe to some of the top clubs, you can wonder, is it worth it? And I think the flip side of that is the growth of MLS. I think we have to consider that MLS is growing at an interesting rate. And certainly right now, the Lionel Messi factor can't be ignored. All of a sudden he arrives, you hear rumors about 4th DPs and salary caps going up and, things changing. That's only going to increase the level of the league. And I think, as we've seen, the floor of MLS is a lot higher than a lot of certain teams in these leagues. Of course, if you're using Belgium as a comparison, is Club Brugge going to wipe the floor with most MLS teams, if not all of them? Probably, absolutely, right? You could probably say that with some certainty. Yet on the bottom edge of things, do you think some of these teams at the bottom of the table could, compete with MLS? I'd say MLS would probably have the edge, and I think it's something where, in terms of that level, some of these, if you're heading to Europe, it might not always be a step up, especially when you factor in the instability, etc. So if you're in a good position, if you're playing regularly in MLS, it could be something, especially if the league continues to grow, where young players take that second to hesitate, but you know what, let's try to push through to a higher level and try to dominate MLS as it is.
Yeah, and in my honest opinion, I don't think the second division in Belgium is a higher level than Major League Soccer. So I'm excited for Liam Fraser to return. And I have a big question mark around him going to FC Dallas because he's going to a team mid-season, and it's always difficult to break into a side that's established right now. They have their established three-man midfield. And on top of that, Dallas went out and picked up Champions League winner Illaramendi. So Alex, I think the big question is this the right move for Liam Fraser to come back to Major League Soccer, specifically with FC Dallas after the acquisition of Illaramendi in their established midfield?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? We mentioned, say, how maybe the level of MLS might be better than some European clubs, case by case basis, of course. Well, it is also only better if you are playing, and that's going to be the big hurdle for Liam Fraser, if he can get those minutes and make this transfer worth it. And there's two sides to this, because I guess on one side, maybe that's what he needs, that competition, that chance to learn from an Illaramendi, show well, and maybe, because Illaramendi isn't a spring chicken, so to speak. This isn't someone where I'm sure Dallas is looking as a 2, 3, 4 year option. Dallas is always someone that focuses heavily on their academy, so I'd imagine this is more to mentor, this is to bring in that next generation. So I think for Fraser, it would be to just prove that he can, maybe now he eases in the last half of the season, gets minutes here and there, and proves that he can be a starter next year. And I think that kind of structure of deal he got really screams a bit of a prove me kind of deal, right? Like the fact that it's through the rest of this year and then it's options. And if he doesn't get it, well, option declined, you're a free agent, you can move on. And I think that'll be interesting to see how he gets on with that sort of situation. Dallas has always been a team that wants to give youth an opportunity. And again, like we mentioned, Fraser, he isn't some 18-year-old kid out of the academy, but he's still young. He's still got room to grow. So hopefully he can just take this opportunity, because I think it's something where if he can work his way in, it also wouldn't hurt him as a number 6 to learn of someone of Illaramendi's qualities, because he's always someone that was good on the ball. I mean, you have to be to play for a Real Sociedad, to play for a Real Madrid. And that's something where Fraser, we know he's good on the ball, and those are things that he could add to his game, just the tempo setting side, all of that. So hopefully that can work. But if not, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because all of a sudden he could be a free agent again, and then that next move becomes so key, because do you give MLS another shot, right? Do you give CPL a look? That becomes all of a sudden a much tougher situation. Whereas now I think it's clear with Dallas. So if you can break in, it's great. If not, things get interesting.
This is a player with 19 caps for the Canadian national team. John Herman just brought him into the Gold Cup. He looked pretty good too. He wasn't even originally called in. He had to come in once Eustachio picked up that injury, and he was really relied upon. So this is a massive move for Fraser, and I hope he takes advantage of it. It's time to move on to EK Ugbo, Alex, who had quite the debut for Cardiff City. It was a 2-2 draw against Leeds United. They were up 2-0, so it was a shame they couldn't see that out. But EK Ugbo gets a goal and an assist. What a way to start his career with Cardiff City.
As a striker, doesn't get much better than that in terms of debuts for EK Ugbo. Gets an assist. Very well taken assist on the opener. Just great bit of awareness. Had the back to goal. Most strikers would have maybe tried to turn and take an impossible shot through a defender. Ugbo passed it off to a teammate. Great finish, great goal. And then just a poacher's goal on the second one. Maybe wasn't the prettiest, but again, as a number 9, that's what you want. Getting in the dirty areas. He anticipated well, finished home, and that's just good. And I think it was great, really, just to see his confidence, just the way he was playing with freedom, because it's, Ugbo's kind of one of those guys you want him to play with that sort of freedom, that joy. And for me, it was just the celebration on the second goal. Like I compare it to last year with Troyes. Remember when he scored, he was in that rough moment, and he kind of his celebration was almost a bit provocative to some of the Troyes supporters, right? Like it was kind of like ears shut, I don't want to hear anything. Whereas this one is just, you could see the joy, the happiness, and I think it's good to see the freedom that Ugbo played with.
Now I'm excited for EK Ugbo because, in my opinion, he's a player that absolutely has to play with confidence. We saw it in his first spell in Belgium where he scored all those goals. We saw it in his first half-season spell in France when he scored all those goals, but when the confidence isn't flowing, it can be very frustrating. So let's just say Ike Ugbo can pick up on this debut and can continue to score goals in a very competitive league like the championship. What do you think it means for him in the national team? Because he is still behind a Kyle Larin and Jonathan David, but recently his national team kind of call-ups have kind of fallen off, I guess. So like this is a good news for him, but what do you think he needs to do to continue this, to maybe just push to try to get in that starting 11?
Absolutely. I think he just needs to keep finding some consistency. I think that's going to be the big one, because he had it in that half season at France, but last year he had anything but consistency. He was in and out the lineup, struggling to get just minutes, let alone goals, etc. Just, I'd say, get some consistency with the performances. And look, the championship's a tough league. Cardiff's a bit of a fascinating situation, as I'm sure we can dive into. It's not going to be easy for them, right? But if he can go get that consistency in his performances, get goals, every couple games, maybe finish at least in double digits, I'd say that's a pretty darn good season in the league as tough as the championship. And look, it's something where he can push, especially with Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. They've been a bit of an enigma for Canada because they score a lot of goals and they can play well together, especially in CONCACAF. But maybe, as we've seen, that partnership can have its limits against top tier opposition, whereas Ugbo, and I will continue to say, he remains Canada's best pure number 9 option, right? Like, he's just someone where, in terms of back to goal, all the traditional number 9 stuff, I'm not expecting that from Jonathan David. Even Kyle Larin, he's someone where he showed a lot of those skills in Valladolid, and he's grown a lot. Ugbo's just still the top natural number 9 Canada has. So if he can find some form, and maybe Larin and David continue to struggle together against top opposition, I would, maybe something where Ugbo gets a chance to play with one of those two. So absolutely, it's a discussion worth looking at.
He certainly has something to prove in the fact that, like you mentioned, Cardiff City, they have a transfer ban right now, which means that they can't actually buy players. They're signing free agents and they're loaning players in. And Ugbo has something to prove this year, not only at the club level, but with the national team. And whether or not he can get to the best form ever, he needs to find a way back into this national team, whether it's coming off the bench or just showing that you have something that you can give to this team. Hopefully he can push on and get double digits and show this is the reason that you need to call me in every single time. And not only that you should, but I can also push for a starting place.
Absolutely, right. And that's the big thing for a striker. Just consistency performances, get those goals, just make yourself undeniable. It's the nice thing is, if you're scoring goals as a striker, it's hard to ignore. And look, Canada's number 9 depth remains wide open. Larin and David, you can put them in pen, but Lucas Cavallini playing in Mexico, Ugbo can definitely push to be the number 3 ahead of him. You look at some of these other guys, maybe not struggling for minutes or consistency at their clubs. There's no reason why Ugbo can't push to be that number 3 option. And then from there, when he's in camp, make the most of those sub opportunities, make the most of if he can win a start. But yeah, like you mentioned, you have to be there first. And for Ugbo, the fact he hasn't been there in the last few windows, you want to see him push back in.
Now it's time to move on to the Canadian quick hit section of the episode.
It was a big week for Theo Bair, who first inked a deal with Scottish club Motherwell following a stint with St. Johnstone. And then in his first start and league debut with the club, scored in a 1-1 draw with Dundee. So good to see from Bair. Hopefully he can find some consistency and build off this after minutes were hard to come by with St. Johnstone.
Theo Corbiano is absolutely loving life in Switzerland right now. He picked up his 3rd assist in just his 3rd match for Grasshopper, defeating Liam Miller's FC Basel 3-1.
Nice moment for Jaden Nelson with Rosenborg this past week, as he scored his first European goal in their UEFA Conference League second round qualifier against Northern Irish side Crusaders. They ended up advancing to the 3rd round, where they'll play Scottish side Hearts. Marco Bustos had his first assist of the Swedish League season for Värnamo this past weekend, as he nabbed an assist versus Brommapojkarna in a 2-0 victory.
We have some more Canadian transfer news, as it's being reported by Alan Nixon that Everton are looking to sign Daniel Jebbison. Jebbison is eligible to represent the Canadian men's national team, but right now he's playing for Sheffield United, and he did just pick up a groin injury, but it's been confirmed that it's not a serious injury, so a transfer this summer window could still be on the cards.
Last bit of transfer news on our Canadian quick hits. Kyle Larin is officially a Mallorca player after being long rumored to return to La Liga. For months now, he makes the jump up from Real Valladolid to Mallorca for a fee of around 7.2 million euros, as reported, with add-ons that could see it rise above 8 million euros. Also, according to the Mallorca Daily Bulletin, he could be one of the highest earners on the squad as well. So certainly a great move all around from Lair.
That is all the time we have for in this edition of Canadians Abroad. I really hope you all enjoyed the episode, and if you did, be sure to tune in for next week's update.